Hi everyone, another week, another roundup of the 10th edition rule announcements. This last 7 days we had 2 announcements, been an article on the Warhammer community website and a grand reveal at the Warhammer Fest that's happening this weekend in Manchester, UK. The grand reveal has a ton of info, focusing mostly on the launch kit, which has got a ton of new miniatures which look absolutely amazing. So let's kick off today with the article exploring how missions will be played in 10th edition. There will now be a single mission system called Only War, which will combine elements of the Grand Tournament packs like the current Arcs of Omen, with a Tempest of War card system that works on a random objective generation style. Everything you'll need will be in this mission deck, utilising a card system with 5 deployment cards, 9 mission cards, 12 mission rule cards, 16 attacker secondary objectives, 16 for the defender, 4 attacker gambit cards, and 4 defender gambit cards as well. The article explains that this system will be good for all types of play, from casual to tournament level. Setting up a game can be randomly done so by shuffling your relevant cards and choosing your deployment, mission rules, and primary mission objectives, aka primary objectives. This is no different to the current system in 9th edition, where you roll a dice to choose your missions. However, in 10th edition, having the deployment, mission rules, and primary objectives being separate and also randomized will add an additional element of change, which could be a lot of fun in 10th edition. It does mention in tournaments, this will probably be all pre-selected by the tournament organizers, again no different to the current edition of 40k. An example they provide is for the mission sweep and clear, which makes objectives sticky, with the primary mission take and hold, awarding a simple 5 victory points for each objective marker you hold for a maximum of 15 victory points per turn. The article does also mention that games will now have just 4 objective markers, not 5 or 6 like in the current 9th edition rule set. This I think will make for a very different style of play, given there's only 4 objectives. After this, you roll off for an attacker and defender and choose 2 secondary missions, being able to stick with 2 all game, or randomly choosing a new one once you've completed your starting 2 cards. The example is given of what an attacker secondary and defender secondary look like, and both seem achievable and relatively high rewarding. The final new element is the gambits, where at the end of the 3rd battle round, either player can choose a gambit that replaces their primary mission, being like the take and hold I just showed earlier. The player keeps all existing victory points, and the idea here is to go for a real Hail Mary, and the shown example indicates that you could either reveal to your opponent that you're staying with your primary mission, or choosing the defender gambit of orbital strike coordinates, where if by the last battle round you've got 1 or more units wholly within 9 inches of a corner of the battlefield, and they are not under battle shock, in your deployment zone, or with engagement range of enemy units, you roll 2d6, and for every table quarter a unit is in, you add 1 to the result. If you roll a 12 or more, you are rewarded with a whopping 30 victory points. This is wild and could be a fun dynamic way to swing a game back in your favour if you've been flattened early on by an alpha strike, for example. As the article says, pulling this off will be hard, and even if you've got units in all 4 table quarters, you need to roll at least an 8 on a 2d6, which is only marginally better than rolling a 9, obviously, to charge from deep strike, and we all know how poor those odds are. That all being said, I think this new mission system looks like a lot of fun, and given the attacker and defender with specific secondary objectives, this may indicate that they've worked hard to flatten out the go first advantage that still exists in 9th edition. As said, I'd guess most tournaments will pre-choose a deployment, mission rules, and primary mission, with maybe a smaller selection of secondary missions, but I'm not sure how they will manage the gambit cards. What we don't know here is whether armies will have their own secondary missions, and I honestly hope they don't. 10th edition is all about simplicity, and each army having their own specific secondaries in 9th edition has made this edition very, very complex. If there are just 16 for the attacker and 16 for the defender across all armies, this could really streamline things. I think this could really work, as surely across 16 options there's going to be enough variety that each army type has something that works well with them. For example, Thousand Suns using psychic abilities, and Harlequins with fast moving board control. Right, next is a Warhammer Fest reveal article that mentions combat patrol games and shedding a bit of light how they're going to be balanced. The idea of combat patrols is that newer players or players wishing to start a new army can purchase one of these combat patrol boxes and play to another combat patrol box of the same size. This is a great idea, but I was super skeptical how they would balance this across all the armies. However, the article does mention that some armies may gain or lose certain abilities, which could be a neat way to manage it. How effective this will be, we'll need to, of course, see at a later stage. Another article also shows the new Space Marine and Tyrant miniatures, with my favourite being the new Space Marine Apothecary and the Tyranid Neuro Tyrant, which has got two brain buddies to help it harness the warp. This article shares more data sheets, including the Tyranid Screamer Killer, which has a terrifying 10 attacks at strength 10, while Space Marine Dreadnought gives insight into how degrading profiles will work with a simple -1 to hit if it's got 1 to 4 wounds remaining. I assume most vehicles will have a similar rule, where only a single aspect of the datasheet worsens, and this matches something GW mentioned in a previous reveal article. Also of note is the strength for a lot of the weapons. The Ballistist missile launcher crack setting is at strength 10, with the Ballistist las cannon at strength 12, which in a world of tougher vehicles will be very, very helpful. I assume this unit is getting all the love, given it's a new and shiny model, but I assume any army-specific weapons, like for example a Limon Rust Executioner Plasma Cannon, will get a similar boost in strength. The Screamer Killer, as said, has an equally strong weapon, with the 10 attacks from its talons now at strength 10, which currently it's only strength 9 in the 9th edition rule set. Final point here is the objective control score of these larger models, which is 3 on the Screamer Killer and 4 on the Dreadnought. So further highlighting what we already know, that vehicles and monsters will be much better at holding objectives in the new edition. Also shared is a Space Marine Inferno Squad, aka Flamer Blokes, with not much to report aside from an additional rule called Purge the Foe, forcing a unit that was hit by their flamers to take a battle shock test. The Screamer Killer has a similar related rule, impacting battle shock, and it feels like the battle shock test is going to be a pretty big part of the way we play 10th edition. I really hope for Astra Militarum that the Commissar unit has got some sweet rules to ignore this or something similar. And the final aspect to explore, and most depressing, is the Codex release roadmap being shared up until spring next year, so call it May 24. To GW's credit, it looks like they are loosely following the same release schedule as 9th edition, with probably only Death Guard missing and also Dark Elder at this point. Of course, Astra Militarum isn't mentioned, which, given 10th edition has been released in June, means we got to enjoy our 9th edition Codex for a grand total of 6 months, having waited 5 years, probably having to wait a further 18 months to 2 years before we get our 10th edition book. Personally, I'm pretty miffed by all this, and my enthusiasm to play right now is super low, but given at least we'll have some army rules at launch with the index cards, hopefully it means we won't be flapping in the wind like we were at several points in 9th edition before the new Codex was released. But anyway, hopefully a helpful exercise bringing you up to speed with all of the 10th edition rule announcements and what the new edition will look like. I've done several other of these videos capturing the rule announcements, and you can check out this playlist here if you want to understand more. But either way, if you enjoyed this and want to support me, you can do as a like, comment, or by subscribing, watching any of my other YouTube videos, or joining my Patreon platoon. A massive thanks to my current supporters. So get your bayonet sharp, lads gone oiled. Faith in the Emperor strong. Patreon platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Tank Commander Mitchell. Colour Sergeant DuPont. Sergeants Adal, the Colonel Merrill. Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lundeen. Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Flint, Hills, Malik, Nitton, Nguyen, Smith, Tom, Tompkin. Conscript England, Gilliam, Goodwin.